It was a far cry from the sleepy northern hamlet of Leicester, where Grandpa Lineker was a star schoolboy footballer in the 1920s.
I left school on the Easter Good Friday of 1925. Several people wanted me to play football for them, but I couldn't afford to. Nobody got any money then. They couldn't afford to pay footballers. But after leaving school on the Thursday afternoon, before the Good Friday, I was up the next morning on Good Friday, cleaning 15 crates of French cauliflower.
6 peaches or 7 nectarines, 50 or 7 nice. Pick your own bunches, any bunch you like now, go.
My family's involved in a market stall. They have been for about 4 generations, and it's still going now. My father runs it. I even worked there when I was young in the school holidays at times. Not too often because it's a bit too much like hard work for me.
Both Gary and Wayne showed an aptitude for all sport. They were football crazy from as soon as they could walk, really. It was obvious that very young that Gary had got a fair bit of talent, and we obviously encouraged it.
It was Gary's ambition from, 5, and Wayne's also, actually, to make the grade at football. There was never any other work, or mind you, it's a good job there wasn't, because Gary's good with his feet, but not very good with his hands. Gary would spend hours and hours going to training. It was sheer dedication on Gary's part.
Mathematics, 3rd year. His work has shown energy, intelligence and control. One of the clear leaders in his group. He must keep aiming high and not rest on these laurels. Overall, these reports indicate his approach to academic work is handicapped by excessive juvenility. It is time that he worked out seriously his objectives in life.
If he could only decide which sport.
At one stage, I think I was probably keener on cricket than football. I got to a reasonable standard at that. I played for sort of Leicestershire schools and Midland schools, and it got to the stage where I wouldn't have minded too much if I'd been a cricketer rather than a footballer. People often ask me now, do you think you'd have ever been a professional cricketer or good enough to have been? And the honest answer to that is I'll never know, because although I played to a good standard up until I was 16, I then started football, and when I got my first offer from Leicester, and cricket sort of went into the background a little bit. It was one Sunday morning. Another story, because my granddad told me, he was standing on the touchline, and he tells me that the chief scout of Leicester, who he knew, a fellow called Ray Shaw, spotted me playing. I think my granddad said to him, "What are you doing here, Ray?" And he says, I'm coming to look at the wing centre forward over there. And my granddad's always been very proud of me. So that's my grandson. And it went from there, and I was invited along to training at Beaver Drive, where Leicester City train, on Tuesdays and Thursdays with a fellow called George Dewis. And when I got to 16, they decided that after having trials with a lot of other boys, I was good enough to take on to an apprenticeship. Well, for me, it was sort of everything. Leicester was always my team, and to have the chance to play in the Leicester City team was like a dream, really.
In those days, Gary was always scoring goals. Even when we were in relegation trouble, he used to get 25, 30 goals a season. So obviously when someone like that's in your team, it's a great help.
It was probably a difficult experience. We were in the 2nd division, and we weren't a great side, but I don't think I was quite ready for it. In fact, I was in and out for about 3 years. I didn't play too many games, and it was only when I got sort of in my 20s that I think I matured. I think I was a late developer, really.
One of the biggest things with Gary was his size. He was never very big, and a lot of people thought that his size would affect his playing ability, but what he didn't have in height, he made up for in heart and attitude, so that goes a long way. But prospect-wise, people never thought he'd make it. Also,
I was a little bit frail. I remember when I first joined Leicester, I was only about 5'6" and 9 stone, sort of wet through. They put me on a course of weights, and I was on a diet to try and build me up. Unfortunately, that worked. I think when I first got in the first team, and I was up against sort of grown men, if you like, for the first time. I was knocked off the ball all the time, and I wasn't quite ready. But when I matured and I got strong, and also obviously when I started to play in my true position, things changed for me.
All of a sudden, I don't know what happened to Gary. He developed, and it suddenly came, and he started scoring goals. And he never stopped scoring goals from that, and that would be when he was about 18, I should think. But when he first came to the club, he looked all right for the first 2 years, but he didn't quite look as if he was going to make a top-class footballer, if you know what I mean. But all of a sudden he blossoms, and then he's got that knack of scoring goals. I think a goal scorer has got to be a nerveless character. He's got to not worry about missing goals. If he misses a goal, he doesn't worry about it. The next one will go in, and that's Gary.
Clear the ball, Melrose. That's not a bad first touch, is it?
Lots of strengths. His pace is probably one of the most important things. He's very brave in the box, good finisher, and he's intelligent.
I think I learned a lot at Leicester. I think that Leicester's a type of club that's perfect for somebody to start at. I think the biggest influence, probably right up until I was 20 in fact, was a fellow called George Dewis, who was the Leicester City youth team coach. The thing about George was that everything he did was on finishing. So he did 2.5 hours a day training. And I don't suppose he's much good for defenders or even perhaps some midfield players, but for strikers and goalkeepers he was fantastic. I think the sheer fact of doing different types of finishing, be it crossing and heading, shooting, dribbling past the goalkeeper, whatever, solidly for 2 hours every day for perhaps 4 years or 3 years, could not have done me any harm. And I think, as I look back now, I owe a great thing to George.
However much Gary owed to George, it was certainly less than Everton now owe to Leicester. In 1985 he moved to the tropical paradise of the northwest.
The wide open spaces of the North Lancashire coast give Lineker and his fiancée a chance to catch their breath after the hectic close season. Quite a contrast to landlocked Leicester.
A little bit of fresh air out of the city. It's quite pleasant actually. And it's a big beach, you can't see the sea. But no, we're enjoying it.
You were mentioned by Mrs. Thatcher, which is not that usual actually for footballers to be talked about in the Commons.
Me and Maggie are like that, you know.
Did you take any notice of what she was saying though?
We were away at the time. We were on tour in Canada, and I phoned Michelle actually, and she said that I'd been mentioned in the House of Commons. Well, that's quite amusing. I don't really know what it's about, something about the high price being paid or something.
I was surprised by players that say the transfer fees are on their mind when they join a club. I can honestly say that when I joined Everton from Leicester, that never entered my head. Obviously there's more pressure, you're at a bigger club. The fans expect more, there's more fans, there's more... You're up there challenging for honours, something that I never really was at Leicester. And obviously those things you think about. But the actual fee never entered my head. It wasn't as though it was my money, it wasn't though they'd given me all that money to play for. Everton decided to pay Leicester City so much for this player, and all of a sudden I was an Everton player. I was fortunate enough to get 1 or 2 offers in, and Everton had just won the championship, and I felt that I could really do something there, and I think it was the right decision.
We'd watched Gary several times. I'd seen him, Howard had seen him, the scouts had seen him, and the reports came back that he was quick, could score goals, and it fitted the bill to what we wanted at the time. If you want him and you think he's the best player for you and you think he's going to do the right job for you, well, the money then becomes irrelevant, because the most important thing is to have the player who you think is the best for you on your books.
Well, obviously he was bought to replace Andy Gray, who was a legend in his own right at Goodison, so obviously he was in for a hard act to follow. But all credit to Gary, he came along. We all knew what he could do when he was with Leicester. It was coming to a big club, there's lots more of pressure. And I think the most pressure was under was replacing Andy Gray.
I didn't realise before I went how idolised he was there on Merseyside. And it was real tough for me. Even though I'd scored something like 15 goals by Christmas, the fans still were against me. Just the fact that I was playing where Andy Gray was playing. I think the actual turning point was somewhere around Christmas. We played Manchester United and Sheffield Wednesday within the space of 3 days, both games at home. I think I scored against United and then a couple against Sheffield Wednesday, who were going well at the time. And it was as though that day the fans just changed, and I was accepted. And after that, it was just great all the way.
I think we adapted to Gary. We're playing more long balls over the top to use Gary's pace, and as I said, the goals came about.
I mean, you ask a goal scorer and they won't be able to tell you either. It's one of those funny things that they have an eye for where the ball is going to drop in the box. They have an eye for when a person's going to cross it, where it's going to be, and even though they've missed a couple of chances, the natural goal scorers and the hungry goal scorers still go back to the same positions, and if they've missed one there 2 minutes before, they'll still go in the same position, and if the ball drops this time, they'll put it in. That's the way they are.
I think things went phenomenally well for me at Everton, goal-wise. It just seemed, from the moment I scored my first goal, it almost seemed like I was scoring them every game, and I think the confidence was getting so high, and I was playing with such good players that it got to the stage where it seemed easy to score goals. That's the thing about goal scoring. When you're struggling to score them, it seems the hardest thing in the world, but when they're going in, it seems the easiest. And that season was, I think I only had a couple of spells of about 5 games without a goal, but apart from that, the goals just went in all the time. The only disappointing thing about the whole Everton year was the fact that we missed out on the league after we looked like we got it sewn up. I remember we lost at Oxford in a game we should have won, and Liverpool just nipped us, and then in the cup final we were 1 goal up, and when we scored after a great pass from Peter Reid. And we seemed to have the game in control. They were arguing with each other, and they seemed to have gone after about an hour of the game. One mistake, Ian Rush was in, and the whole thing changed. Within minutes we were 3-1 down, and it was all lost. And that was the saddest thing about the year at Everton, just not winning one of those major titles.
I mean, unfortunately, we didn't win anything, but Everton have been always had great centre forwards, and Gary was one of them in that mould. He had a terrific impact with the supporters, and obviously if you score that many goals for the club, you're going to be successful or nearly successful. It was just unfortunate for us that Liverpool just pipped us on both accounts.
Still voted Player of the Year, and elsewhere his fortunes were flourishing.
I think playing for England is the greatest thing, and the greatest thing for me about playing football, and it always has been. The thing that annoys me so much is when you hear the ex-players about it doesn't mean so much to the players nowadays when they pull the white shirt on with the 3 lines, because nothing could be further from the truth. There's no greater thing than playing for your country, and it still means just as much now as it did the first day I sort of pulled that white shirt on. I just hope to sort of continue to do well and play in the England side as long as I can, because I know that when I eventually can't play for England, I'll miss it.
5 years ago, when I watched him play at Leicester, I saw this young kid with exceptional pace, who was quick off the mark, and it never got any slower, running very intelligently between defenders, past centre-halves and in between full-backs, cutting through the 18-yard box and looking as though he could take a chance in front of goal and be composed. And when I first picked him for the England team, a lot of my colleagues at the time said, Gary Lineker, didn't even know the boy.
My first 4 game was at Wembley against Era. I think we won 2-1, and fortunately I got the second goal that day, which was really nice. It was a spell where there was a lot of good strikers around, but they were all getting towards that 30. You got Trevor Francis, Tony Woodcock, Paul Mariner, who'd all done England proud over the years. We're all sort of towards 30, 31, and they didn't. Well, fortunately for me, there wasn't too many challenging them, and I was one of those, and eventually I got my chance. And because there wasn't a great nucleus of strikers coming through at that stage, I was given perhaps a little bit more time.
Stevens is onside, and Lineker 2-0. England very much in the groove.
That was my first hat-trick for England. The first one, pretty simple task of heading it in. The second one was probably a better one. It was a near post one. I just got in front of the defender and headed it really well down into the bottom corner.
He's gone to the near post. Lineker. It's 4. And England promised a night of celebration, and that's certainly the way it's turning out.
And the third one, I remember getting on the edge of the box, I think it was sort of a half turn, and just worked it really, and it just went in the bottom corner.
A very special moment indeed. 3 goals for your country.
That was a memorable game for me. I think that was one that really probably established myself at that particular time as England's frontman, and sort of from then on I held my place right through up to the World Cup.
He came at a very good time for us, just prior to the 1986 World Cup in Mexico, where he had gained 2 years of international experience before that tournament took place. So the 1986 World Championship was a good time for Gary, because he was probably at his peak and probably at his very best, and that tournament, even though it was played in terrific heat and at a difficult altitude, suited him. It suited his experience, and it suited his time as a player.
Yeah, I remember we were playing in Canada, just a friendly game, just a week or so before the actual World Cup started, just as a warm-up game, and I had a collision with the centre half, and I just fell. I sort of fell straight on the hand there, and the wrist just went, and I heard a crack, and actually it's the most pain I've ever been in all of my life. It was just excruciating. So the physios, they rushed me off to the hospital, and they'd all thought I'd actually broken it, but which obviously would have ruled me out of the World Cup. But fortunately it was just very badly sprained ligaments, though it was practically the same as being broken. It did mean that I could play with just a sort of soft plaster, which they'd allow me to play in for the World Cup itself.
When we went to Mexico, again, the first couple of games, it was a lot of pressure and a lot of stick because we didn't win. Gary was under pressure. He's a resilient character, and he just kept his head down, worked hard, and a player like him will always score, even in like World Cup finals.
I think when you're really young and you're just breaking into the England side, you're just so bursting to play, you don't think about anything else. You just want to get out there and score goals. And fortunately I did okay. I scored a few in my early games, which makes it easier. But when you start playing in World Cups and European Championships, you do notice the pressure. I mean, just the intense coverage, the press, the media, and I mean, it means everything, not only to the players but to the people as well. I mean, especially noticed during the World Cup, although we were miles away from it over there, we were sent the press, and you could tell the feeling in the people just from that. So what it must have been like here, and it's been explained to me since, that it was really incredible.
This particular day, Gary was in the World Cup, and he'd had a bad time. He hadn't scored, and he was getting rather desperate, so he phoned me from Mexico, and he says, "Mum, please change my luck." He says, "We're usually lucky for each other, So I says, "Well, I do feel, Gary, really, that you will score tonight." I says, "Not just 1, 2. I says, I know it's going to be 2. I really feel it." And it was against Poland.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the most important goal was that first one against Poland.
I would think the first goal that Gary scored for us in the World Cup match against Poland in Mexico, when we had started not very well and were looking to win against Poland.
It's got to be the first against Poland. I think you had to be out there to feel the pressure.
We were under tremendous amount of pressure, and the sheer relief that brought not only myself, who had gone 6 games for England without a goal, but the whole team, the whole country, if you like. That I think that's the most special goal I've scored.
Fortunately, Gary's wasn't the only trademark etched on the World Cup that year. Having scored 2 goals to beat Paraguay, Gary and the England team met Argentina in the quarter-finals.
We weren't playing as well as we'd done in the previous 2 games. Probably the fact that Argentina were a very good side. They had a lot of good players and put us under pressure. I felt we played a little bit too deep. We didn't sort of come out enough at them. And it wasn't until we went 2-0 down that we really responded. I mean, everybody knows about the Maradona goal, but that's all history now. But we were behind, and we went 2-0 down to a goal that This is probably the best goal you've ever seen, or I've certainly ever seen anyway. And then we sort of, I think we brought John Barnes, and he set it alight a little bit. He really went at them and whipped a couple in. I remember pulling one back, and then we all of a sudden were in it again. And I still to this day don't know how the one just a few minutes from time didn't go in when John again got to the byline, crossed it. And I remember the ball coming up, headed it, and the fella somehow has shot up from underneath my legs, and as I've headed it's hit the back of his head and spun out. And I've seen it on video a million times, and it was to see exactly how he did it, and it really was incredible. But the amazing thing is that not many people know that if we'd have got through to the semi-finals I wouldn't have played anyway, because I hit the post following through that and twisted my knee ligaments, which probably would have ruled me out the semi and the final anyway.
And do the job he did, but not from England anymore. When he came home from the World Cup, Gary heard an offer that was music to his ears.
As I flew into Spain, it really hit me that everything was happening, because before there was the wedding, the World Cup, there was so much going on, I didn't really have time to think about the move, and that's when it hit me actually coming in on the plane, and I thought, gosh, we were circling around Barcelona, I thought, what are we doing?
Yeah, just before we arrived here in Barcelona, it was probably the most hectic time I've actually ever spent, because after the World Cup, which obviously went very successfully for me, the interest with Barcelona was mounting, and within 2 days I think I actually signed for Barcelona. The following Saturday got married to Michelle, of course, and the next day went on a honeymoon, and the day after the honeymoon, a fortnight we had in Florida, we went straight out to Barcelona, so it was a really hectic time.
I felt when he was at Everton, he was the best goal scorer alongside Ian Rush. And Ian Rush was one that we were interested in as well, but the money was too high, and we felt that we'd done the negotiation actually just before the World Cup, and we got the price of 2.4 million, which at that time I thought was a good one, and then him scoring, being the highest goal scorer in the World Cup, I'm sure if we'd have left it any longer the price would have been higher. But to be fair to Everton, they stuck on the price that we negotiated, and they played the game, and we felt all round, I think both clubs felt it was a good deal.
Well, I felt the chance to go to Barcelona was sort of a one-off. I couldn't really imagine getting another opportunity. I didn't want to leave Everton, I'll be honest. I had a tremendous year there, but it was the experience and the thought of the experience, the thought of chance of playing for one of the greatest clubs in the world. Everton are a great club, but a great foreign club, and it's sort of an institution. The chance to learn another language and everything like that just really appealed to me, and obviously the financial thing as well, because clubs like Barcelona can look after you. It took a little bit of time to make the decision to actually do it. In the end, the way we actually decided, and this is true, was we both wrote on a piece of paper and put it in the middle, and we both opened and both said yes. So that was how we actually ended up in Barcelona. But we both went with the attitude to enjoy it, learn the language, adapt to the lifestyle, and really have a go at it.
I think Gary and his wife adjusted to the lifestyle very quickly. They were determined to learn the language, and both speak it very well now. And they just fell into it like they'd been there all their life.
I think the welcome was incredible when I first arrived there. I think the day we actually arrived, we went straight to the Camp Nou for a training session, and it's basically a thing to introduce new players to the crowd. They come along. There's 60,000 people there, just to basically see a five-a-side, and then a little game, and everybody sort of waved to the crowd, which really made me think, I've arrived, and this is a little bit different.
certainly the best I've played. I've played in the Azteca in Mexico and Wembley, of course, which has got its own special magic. But actual facility-wise, and the fact it's so modern and so big and so comfortable, for me, it just makes it the best in the world. There's a lot less atmosphere in the stadium, surprisingly enough, although there's probably 2 or 3 times as many people come to these games here than would in England because it's so big. They're quite a crowd. They're probably the same sort of people, actually, that come to the football here in Barcelona as go to the opera. It's sort of the thing to be a member of Barcelona Football Club. Yeah, I remember walking out the first time I played here in front of practically a full house. Everybody had told me about it. It was the first time you sort of go out there, and it went really well. I mean, I scored after sort of 2 minutes, which looked like a dream, really, and then got another one later on. We won the game, and it was a tremendous experience.
It was a different form of football. He was going to have to play against a sweeper system regularly in Spain, whereas opposed to the flat back four defensive system which operates in England. He therefore had to have a better eye, grasp his chances even quicker, because they were going to, I think, probably come fewer and far between than they do in England because of the sweeper system. There was also going to be a tight marking player on him plus cover, and you need to be a good player to play 2 against 1, and Gary Lineker was obviously going to face that in Spanish football. So it was a good experience for him. It did him good.
I don't think it's any physically stronger than England. I think the football's probably more physical here. What happens is there, it's more niggly, probably more cynical. There's more elbows, there's more shirt pulling. With a man-to-man marking, every time you go to make a run, before the ball's even kicked, they've got hold of your shirt or they're pulling in your shoulder, grabbing anything they can to stop you actually getting away from them in the first place. So you have to learn how to deal with that. It's just very frustrating at times.
I think we probably coped with it in different ways, if coping is the word. I think I probably try to get the better of them physically, which is probably the wrong way to go about it, whereas Gary would try and do it with a bit of guile. I don't think Gary changed his game. I think he made the Spanish players change their game to a certain extent, because up till then they'd always been used to playing to feet and 1-2s around the box and everything. But I think when Gary went there, obviously he wanted them to play to his strengths, and I think that shows the strength of Gary, that he was, in the end he was able to turn around their thinking.
Well, the first year he scored 16 goals. We came second in the league that year, and to score 16 in Spain is very difficult. You won't see many goal scorers going to Spain or Italy going above 15 goals, but he did that. One of the goals I remember was away at Bilbao, who were a strong side at the time, and he'd gone through on a pass from the halfway line, and of course there was a long time to think about it. They were chasing him, and he got through clear of everybody else with the hounds at his heels, and just the goalkeeper to beat. Well, you say, well, that's a fairly easy goal, but at the end of it, at the crucial time, he just give it a scoop, running at pace. If you're standing still and scoop it, it's easy, but to run with the ball at pace and then slowly scoop it up over the goalkeeper's head was a high skill, and there was a lot of pressure on him after carrying the ball that distance to do something like that, and that always seems to stick out in my mind.
One of the most memorable games, if not the most memorable I played here, was of course the game against Real Madrid in my first season, early on in '87, when the game here, the Madrid game, is everything to the people. It's probably more important than we won the Cup Winners' Cup, for example, this year. It's probably more important to beat Madrid than sort of win something like that. And to not only win the game, but to score a hat-trick as well was something I'll never forget, and which always sort of put me a little bit in the hearts of the people here, which helped me gain the popularity I eventually got here. The atmosphere for a Real Madrid game is certainly a lot different from the majority of the other games. Obviously for the Real Madrid game, everybody wants to see that one and be part of that. And they come out in force, and there's a different atmosphere completely to that game. And I think that shows what type of player Gary is. He loves that occasion when there's a big buzz and a big crowd and a big occasion. And I think he warms to them occasions.
The Spanish people loved him out there. I think that they took to him very well, and in the end they were very disappointed to see him leave, and he got a great rapport with them because they're used to having foreign players go there, and a majority of them try to act beyond what they are. All right, they may be stars, but they're still human beings, and they want to act a bit beyond that. Gary, I think, got a great rapport with the fans because he behaved like one of them.
Alejandro, no? Casado, sí. Well, I think after Terry went, it was always going to be a little bit different, because obviously the manager that brings you to any club, not just because the fact he's English, and I knew him through that anyway, but when a new manager goes and you get a new manager that wasn't the person that brought you here, it's always going to be a little bit tricky for a spell. Although the fellow that came, Luis Aragonés, was a really nice man and a very good coach as well. So it didn't go too badly, and I finished the season, I think, with about 17 league goals, which wasn't too bad. And then, of course, he went, and the season after came Johan Cruyff when the problems really did start, unfortunately.
Gary Lineker's style of football has got to appeal to anybody. The man scores goals. Tell me a manager that doesn't appeal to, and I'll tell you a manager who's not going to remain in football for very much longer. Football's like everything else in life. A new manager comes along, players don't necessarily see eye to eye with the manager and vice versa. Not because they don't like each other, although that happens quite a lot. Things happen. It's all about people. Obviously Cruyff wasn't keen on Lineker. I think what happened with Gary, his biggest problem was his illness.
Well, the hepatitis of '88 was also important because it, not only through the England European Championships where obviously it affected me, but certainly missing pre-season here when Cruyff came, not sort of being able to impress on the new manager, sort of my strengths or weaknesses or whatever, and getting used to the system, I missed out on that, which I think definitely took its toll. Well, it didn't go that badly because we won the Cup Winners' Cup. I was playing out of position, which was the most frustrating thing, and which wasn't any good to me. Although I just got on with it and did the best that I could. But the crowd were fantastic, and towards the end there was sort of petitions and banners in the crowd, and the fans were really didn't want me to go, which was nice. I think the nicest thing of all was the reaction of the players. Sort of we had a. I didn't actually play in the last game because I had a little injury and I couldn't play. There wasn't a big crowd in that day because it was a big holiday here. The season was basically over. We couldn't do anything, so we didn't have that many people in. But it was nice. There was a nice ovation, and then I went on the pitch and the players wanted to have the photo with the team, and then they sort of all gave me a big hug, which they do in Spain, and it was a little bit emotional. It certainly brought a lump to the throat.
I think Gary went to Barcelona for all the right reasons, and I think as England players go, he was one of the most successful. I tried it. It was a little bit different in my day. I went to AC Milan. Communications were difficult. You couldn't pick up a telephone and dial home. There was a couple of flights a week to Milan. I kept missing them. So I think it's a lot easier for a modern player to go abroad. But having said that, Ian Rush didn't find it very successful. Gary Lineker did, and he conducted himself wonderfully well, both on and off the field, and he came out of it superb.
I think he's added quite a lot to his game. The type of runs he's had to make. He's had to play against a sweeper, which he doesn't have to play against often in England, and it gave him a completely new dimension of the game, and he saw all sides, and his runs became cleverer, and he doesn't complicate his game. He knows what he is, he knows what his game's about, he's worked his game out, he plays very simple, and he always makes good runs towards goal, perhaps as good as anybody you can see running off the ball.
Well, the fact that he played for Barcelona and they were getting European competition experience, playing against other teams other than Spanish players, was vital to Gary. He was one of the very few players in the England team who was getting that experience. So he kept us going in many ways, and I think that's why he retained his sharpness, why he still excelled, why he still could take a chance. It was rather sad that the rest of the players, weren't getting the same sort of experience that Gary was getting. So the move to Barcelona in that respect kept his cutting edge.
I think my Spanish playing was successful, not just on the field but off it. I think it's made me I don't know whether it's made me a better person, but it's certainly, I've matured a great deal. I feel sort of more worldly, and I feel I can go on my own 2 feet, and so we went out there, just the two of us, just after we married, and we got by okay. And I won things there. I won the Spanish Cup, I won a Cup Winners' Cup, European thing, which obviously no English players done for quite a while, due to the ban. So I think overall, looking back at it, I'm really pleased with how it went.
He's going to leave an empty place in Barcelona, in the team and in Barcelona, because all the Spanish supporters will love him as a person, as a player, and we wish, because I speak on behalf of all the supporters, all the best to him, because he doesn't deserve anything else, only but the best.
And only the best was just what the Hotspurs were after. Coming home, and a new face emerged from the Spurs tunnel.
I wasn't particularly desperate to come back to English football, I'll be honest about that. I just wanted to go to a club that I felt was sort of the right club to go to. I wanted to play for a big club. I mean, I would have been really interested about going to Italy. AC Milan, Inter Milan, or Juventus, somebody like that. One of those clubs that had come in. I would have been very interested, but they didn't. Monaco came in, and obviously Monaco had its sort of advantages. Nice place to live. The money's good, and it's a place where there's no tax, which obviously is beneficial, but there's more to it than that. So then I started to think, and in the end I actually rang Terry Venables.
I mean, Gary says that he called me, and that is true, because I'd been over there several times, and we had dinner together and lunch together, because of the fact that we knew each other and got on so well. But never did he say anything to me about coming to England, and I never asked him. A, I didn't think he really wanted to come to England at that stage of his career, and B, I didn't think we could have afforded it. Well, both things changed. His mind changed on the idea, and of course the price change came down, and I think of taking him and Naeem for 1.4 million was an excellent deal for Tottenham.
I mean, the money thing always comes into it. Obviously I'd done okay at Barcelona, but I could have gone to Monaco and earned a lot more money, but I didn't think that was the most important thing. I felt that it was time, it was really important for me to sort of get my football right. Football was the main reason for coming back to Spurs.
I think the Spurs fans can always expect from Gary 100% on scoring goals. You might not see anything fancy from him. He never pretends to be a fancy player, but he's an efficient goal scorer, and I think that's what wins games, and I think that
we're all hopeful, we've all got our ambitions. And
Gary, I don't expect any haul of goals. I expect him to get as many chances as he can and try to score as many as he can, and hope that takes us to a high tally. You can't put numbers on what people should go to. I think he might have his own targets, I don't know, but I wouldn't necessarily. I would hope to think that it's lots and lots.
I think the thing about pressure is that the higher I seem to have gone, the better I've done during my career, the more difficult it's become to please people. I don't know why it is. I think that when it was at Leicester, okay, if I scored 15, 20 goals, that's great. And at Everton, you've got to do just a little bit more. And it all started really when I sort of did well in the World Cup with England. I'd sort of scored 6 goals, finished top goal scorer in the World Cup. All of a sudden I was expected to score every game. It was as though if I didn't score for a game, I was sort of Lineker in a sort of spell of he's gone a game without a goal, he's gone 2 games without a goal, which we really got a bit sort of out of order.
More than anything, then physical courage, and then if you've got skill and speed and dedication to score goals but not to do anything else, That's what makes a striker.
I mean, I've always wanted to score goals. You've got to have a real desire to score goals. I've always had that desire. I've always been one that looks up how many I've got, or at your records, or I've always known how many I've got that season. I can remember every goal I've scored, more or less. And I think all the top goal scorers can do that. They are desperate to score as many as they can. If they've got one in a game, they'll really want to score another one. And that's the way I've always been.
I hate seeing a striker say, I don't mind who scores the goals. It's a terrible thing for a striker to say. You know, I love to see a striker say, I want to score the goals. And Gary Lineker's got that attitude.
Good strikers have got a gift of being the right time, the right place. Allied to... Gary's got that. Allied to that is there's terrific pace. That's... If you're going to score goals, that's all the attributes you need. And Gary Lineker's got an awful lot of them.
Pace has always helped me through, but I think it's my anticipation, if you like. I think people often say about a player that scores goals, he was in the right place at the right time. That's true, but the answer to that is to be in the right place all the time. And if you're there eventually, and the thing about it is, I'll try and explain how to score goals now, but it's all about making runs and movement in the box, and obviously the pace that helps. The thing I always do is I make a run, and I'll decide I'll just take a chance to go for a space. I'll make sure I get there in front of the defender, and then if the ball comes to me, well, that's great. So if I make 15, 20 of those runs in a game and the ball comes to me once and I'm all on my own 2 yards out from goal, everybody will say, well, he's in the right place at the right time. But the answer is to be in that place all the time. Then eventually when the ball does come to the right place, you're there.
A lot of people say, well, he's just stood around for 85 minutes and managed to put one in the back of the net in the last minute of the game, and, what else has he done? But believe me, you've come off tired, because you've worked that defender, you've worked that defence, that way, up, down, back. You're looking for opportunities, you're looking for that 5 yards of space that you need, so that when your defence get it, if they get it, they can give it to you.
If I'm getting chances and missing them, I'm quite happy, because I know that I'm doing the right things. All of a sudden, if I'm not getting any chances, then you've got to think, well, am I doing something wrong, or is the team not playing well, or is it me? And then I think you've really got to analyse yourself a little bit. But if I'm playing in games and I'm missing 3 or 4 chances, I know that continues to happen. The goals will go in again.
I think Gary's a level-headed lad. He's very intelligent. He just knows that he can stick the ball in the net and he can play football, and he knows it'll come. His time will come again. I mean, I always remember when we were at Everton, one of the first games at Wigan pre-season, and he missed 2 sitters. I mean, I'd have scored them. They were that bad. And we were in the bath afterwards, and I said, what's going on? Like £1 million for that? And Gary says, I'll miss them. He said, but next one will come along, I'll stick it in. And that's what he keeps doing.
I mean, I had a fantastic lifestyle. I've managed to live in abroad. I've learnt another language. Obviously, financially, I've done okay out of everything, and I've got a really happy lifestyle. But it's hard work as well. I mean, there's a lot of hard training you have to go through. It's not all easy. There's a lot of pressure on the job as well. I mean, there can't be too many jobs where there's more pressure than playing football, where you do literally live from game to game. But overall, I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I've been sort of lucky to be able to do something for a living that I really like doing.
I mean, the quote of the century was when I brought him home. He was playing in the reserves, I think, and Dad said, he's a really nice fellow, Michelle. He says, but he'll never be a footballer, unfortunately. Don't know what career he's going to take, but he'll never be a footballer. I said, oh.
I can't see anybody else coming up to his standards, not at this particular time. I only wish I could say that there was another 2 or 3 Gary Linekers on the horizon, but there isn't. He's been the one-off of this decade, and there's certainly not going to be one now.
George Best had it, Dennis Law had it, Gert Müller had it, Pele had it, Di Stefano had it, Puskas had it, Gary Lineker has it.
I've always thought that the only thing you can do is do your best and try and do the right things all the time, and that's what I should continue to do, and hopefully that'll be good enough. If it's not, well, that's a shame.
Gary, what did I say?